Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest on the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, so today is a very special episode. We're bringing back Joseph Ori. Let me tell you, we've been working with him now for a better part of, we've been working on this book launch. I feel like going on 2 years, year and a half, 2 years. So labor of love, lot going on. And first off, before we get into the book, I want to welcome you back and say congrats, Joe, coming back on the show.
Thank you. I really appreciate it, Adam.
Joe, the book, we're a year and a half in, as I mentioned before. It's finally out. It's live. It's launched. We're going to get into that. But first, let's start with what we call our Mission Matters Minute. So, Joe, at Mission Matters, as you know and are aware, we amplify stories for entrepreneurs, executives, and experts. That's our mission. Joe, what mission matters to you?
The mission, well, my first mission in life matters is to be a great father, to be honest with you, and a great husband. So I obviously have a lot of going on, as you know, as
Yeah.
always. But my mission in life is to be a better person every single day.
Hmm. It's good. It's a good one. And you are busy and you got I say this in a good way, you got a tribe over there, man. I love it. It's a big family. You do big things.
Six kids, man, six kids, and I got one in law school in New York, and then all the way down to a 3 week old.
Hmm.
So yeah, a lot going on.
I mean, this concept, I know this is going slightly off script, but what are some of the things that you feel like help you be able to do that, like to be a good person and to want to take on those responsibilities? Like what makes you you?
Well, I'd like to say that I am, a very transparent, straightforward person. I think,
Mm.
having grown up the way that I did in the culture that I did, an Italian family, we're kind of a rarity these days. I tell people that I'm the son of immigrants, and they're like, "But you can't be Italian because all the Italians came here in the 1930s." I'm
Oh,
like,
that's
yeah,
funny. I never thought
yeah.
about that. Yeah, you can't. Like, what do you mean? You're too young.
Yeah, so I grew up with my kids telling me none of my parents are ever like you. None of my friends' parents do any of the stuff you do. And I used to say that's probably a good thing then.
Yeah.
I'm old school in the sense that I preach family. I preach being honorable, being a decent person. Meaning what you say and saying what you mean.
Yeah.
So that's pretty basic stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's
But
it's tough these days. It's tough these days. The culture's changing, in my opinion. There's a lot of wizards and unicorns, we call them out there.
mm,
Especially in certain industries, like cannabis. There's a lot of people who make promises and don't deliver. So
mhm.
you separate yourself by being a person who, as I said, means what you say and says what you mean and does what they. Guess I should say, does what they say they're going to do. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. I get it. Let's get a little bit into your background here. I don't want to assume we've been pretty blessed. The audience has grown. You haven't been on the show at least for 6 months or somewhere along that time. So what's been going? Maybe start with your background. Let's go. Let's get a little bit into what you do in law, and then we'll build from there.
Sure. I started my own law practice the day that I graduated law school. So
Okay.
I think I shared it with you once before. I read a book called How to Start Your Own Law Firm and Not Miss a Meal. And by the time I got to the end of it, gave you a formula. And the end of last chapter said, okay, so yeah, here you are. You've got 5 to 7 years of experience, and you're ready to go off on your own. I'm like, whoa, wait a
You're
minute.
still.
I don't have those 5 to 7 years. So I just jumped into it and did it. And I said, if I fail at this, I'll figure something else out because, a lot of people go to law school and, you lose your entrepreneurial spirit right there.
Mm,
It's really tough to be an entrepreneur and go to law school.
mhm.
Because when you come out, you really, you're mostly going to be forced to go into some law firm, some institutional type
Yeah.
of framework.
Especially if you got student loans, like, it's just kind of the way it
Yes.
works. It's the track. All you're thinking about is the math of, I got these loans, I gotta do, like, I gotta get out, I gotta pay for these loans, like, and so, yeah, go ahead, please, but I just
Yeah.
like to throw
Yeah.
that out there.
For sure. My son's going through it right now. My oldest son is at Columbia Law School, and he's just finished his first semester. And I told my kids, I pay for college, you pay for graduate school. So my
Mm.
son's taken on $300,000 worth of loans, and he actually, I do have to give a plug to him right here. He just got, after one semester, he just got hired by Cravath, which is the number one law firm allegedly in the United States, and
Wow.
he's set. He one semester of law school, he's got his summer associate position, and but yeah, I mean, I had loans, and I said, well, I'll figure it out.
Mm.
I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna set out to start my own law practice, and if I fail, then I'll figure it out after that. And for better or worse, I succeeded. But
Mm.
it took a lot of different. I was doing real estate closings on Monday. I was doing, criminal cases on Tuesday, divorce cases on Wednesday.
Wow.
But I'll tell you what, it gave me a good breadth of the law in general. And I did learn. I taught myself. I tell everybody this: if I had Chat GPT back then, this would have been so much easier.
Wow.
I had to go do actual real research and figure out what was going on. And then after a while, I just kind of fell into, injury, and I started to do a lot of catastrophic work. And,
Mm.
that's what was my bread and butter and still is. And now, obviously over the years, I never stopped my entrepreneurial spirit. And
Mm.
so I've been involved in many different businesses and ventures across the way, but I come back home to what I started, almost 27 years ago. So
Yeah. Wow, what a journey. Time flies, doesn't it? When you think
yes, it sure
27
does.
years, you're like, come on, your son. Congrats to your son out there. Like, freaking, it's amazing. One semester in to land something like that. Like, obviously, he's killing it.
Yeah, I taught my kids, you guys have a better opportunity than
Mm.
I did, and you have to outdo me. That's your goal. Your goal is to say, man, my dad, leave me in the dust. Say, I crushed my dad. I want them to do
Mm.
that. So, but yeah, I'm very proud of all of them. They're all doing great. They're all
That's
doing
awesome.
great.
Well, let's get into some of the entrepreneurial stuff. So, what you're working on present day. So, I know you got a couple of ventures going. Where do you want to start with that? How do you want to tee that up?
So yeah, so the Ori Law Group, we just got some new offices out in the suburbs of Chicago to cater to a lot of the clientele that don't want to go to the city anymore.
Hmm.
I obviously have the cannabis company that's still going in Michigan.
Yeah.
We opened up some operations in Illinois, and I'm also launching a new law firm with three attorneys from
Hmm.
different parts of the country, and it's called Legal Luminate. And there's also a
Hmm.
consulting branch to it, and we're super excited about the potential for that to sort of take root, because we're kind of coming out and saying, every law firm is using AI now. I mean, every
Yeah.
single one of them, right? So we're not going to hide behind that. We're basically coming out and saying we're going to streamline your matters. We're going to do a
Mm.
lot of different types of stuff in some emerging areas. Or you're
Hmm.
still going to do your traditional business, corporations, transactions, things like that. But we're kind of focusing on cannabis. We're focusing on cryptocurrency. We're focusing on psychedelics,
Mm.
trying to give what our goal is, Adam, and this is honestly what we found out, is that, and I found this out when I
Yeah.
was younger, is that one of the biggest hurdles to new business is expenses that you don't factor in. Like, I'm
Mm.
consulting with the young entrepreneurs that graduated NYU. My son went to undergrad at NYU. These guys have an app that's fantastic.
Mm.
They're getting offered by VCs already, and I've been consulting with them from both a business perspective and legal.
Hmm.
And these guys are starting to sign some serious contracts, and they're like,
Wow.
okay, we don't factor that into our, how much is all this going to cost? So what we started realizing is there's a lot of new businesses that can't afford lawyers, that can't afford the
Mm.
traditional, okay, I need you to write an operating agreement for me, and that costs $10,000.
Yeah.
Well, with us, we're saying, hey, listen, we're not going to lie to you. We're going to get this. We have a format. We have an AI format. We're going to get it done for you for half the price or
Mm.
significantly less than what you had been paying, and you're going to get a great quality document. And hopefully down the road, when your company takes off, then we'll be your go-to guys. And we're
Mm.
hoping to give a lot of younger entrepreneurs who have an idea and
Mm.
don't have the ability to knock on the door, or don't have a friend or a family member who's a lawyer who can help them out. Because what a lot of these young businesses do is get themselves entangled in stuff, even with their partners. So the consulting branch of the company
Hmm.
that we're forming is going to actually provide deal mediation. So when partners and members of an LLC are
Mm.
fighting with each other, we're saying, okay, don't lawyer up. Don't everybody just run to go get lawyers. And many of these people don't have money
Mm-hmm.
to get lawyers. So we're saying, listen, contact us. We have a broad range of experience in multi-layered businesses. We're all also, licensed attorneys who've been doing this for many years. We'll come in and we'll sit down for a fraction of the cost that you'd spend,
Yeah.
and we're going to try and work your deal out. We're going to tell you where this is all going to land. And me having a lot of trial experience
Mm.
helps because I can kind of give people a forecast.
Mm.
Okay, this is what you're looking at. This is where it's probably going to land. And if you put this case in front of a judge, this is where you're going to end up, and
Mm.
be able to look everybody in the face and say, before you guys all lawyer up, maybe this is what you want to work out. Worry about the
Mm.
prize, keep pushing your business forward. Don't get entangled in this, because this is what you're likely going to end up with. And you're going to take 3 years of your life away from you and this business project.
Mm.
And it's not going to work out. And hopefully, like I said, we're hoping that we can get to that before everybody has attorneys, because
Mm-hmm.
attorneys screw everything up. Attorneys
Mm.
screw everything up, especially when they're being paid to represent their client. And so we're saying, listen, before you go to do any of that, bring us in. We'll mediate this for you, and
Mm.
hopefully work it out for very, very minimal cost. And you guys can worry about what's really important to you.
Yeah. I want to circle back to what you're talking about with your other project and the AI, the new firm you're launching. Can you comment just in general? Because this has just been on my mind, like more and more firms like have to use this, right? For a certain extent, or I shouldn't use the word have to. Do they have to use this? And do you see this as maybe a trend that more firms are going to go in that direction? And if they do go in that direction, maybe it's going to put pressure on prices. Like what do you see as a long-term trend there? Give me the
Wow.
crystal ball, Joe.
Yeah. Well, Adam, that is a fantastic question. I'll sum it up for you easy like this. When my son, ended up getting into, a top 10 law school, 10 years ago, I was like, this is the easiest thing in the world. You're going to get hired by a firm like you got hired from, and you're going to have a job, and you're going to make tons of money out of the gate. And I started to get nervous over the
Mm.
last 12 months. I was like, okay, wait a minute. Did I steer this young man in the wrong direction? Because I said,
Yeah.
what are these big firms that have 1,000 lawyers, and
Mm.
maybe 5% of those lawyers are partners? The rest of these associates are running around doing all the legwork. They're billing these associates out at $700-800, and they're actually walking away with probably a fraction of that in their
Yeah.
yearly salary, which looks great to them. How do they justify that?
Mm.
Because what you can do now with AI is you can literally take a body of information. Like, I can
Mhm.
do an interview with you as a new
Yeah.
client, and I could have that interview transcribed from an AI instrument, and then take that, upload it into a chat GPT
Mhm.
directed law type platform. And I'll say, make an operating agreement for this interview that I just did with these members of this
Yeah.
LLC, and it'll write a document that's 60%, 70% done. Now you need a lawyer to do the rest
Of
of it.
course. But
But
60 to 70% is significant, and that's just now. So, like, in a couple years, does that you know what I mean? Like that.
it's amazing. So what I was told, by some of my friends who are in big law, because I was doing this investigation for my son, I said,
Yeah.
listen, are these jobs going to be there? They said, for now they are going to be, because what those firms face is that they can't throw this sensitive information into the ethos, right? So they
Oh,
can't. It's attorney-client privilege type stuff.
yeah. Yeah.
I'm sure there's a lot of lawyers who are handling matters that are not so significant in nature, that are just doing it. They're willing to take the chance, or maybe
Yeah.
they're substituting the names of the clients, and which you can do.
Yeah.
But what these larger firms are trying to do is integrate their own internal AI uh, platforms, so
Yeah.
that they're proprietary, they're owned by the law firm. And
Oh.
but I still, to answer your question, Adam, I don't see how, 10 years from now, there are still 3,000, attorney law firms. I just I don't see how
Yeah.
it happens. I really
And that
don't.
proprietary thing, so that is probably not putting words in your mouth, but if we think about like some other industries where people, that to use your words, like on the 3000, like if that's cut down, the ones that are going to be left standing, so to speak, are probably the ones that have a case for their proprietary whatever. And over time they're going to be selling the technology just as much as they're selling, if maybe, who knows, long enough. Oh, you know what, if you think about it, like a Charles Schwab or something like that, how they have the robo investors or things like that. Like you have people selling the technology just as much, if not more, than some of the people behind, where in the past maybe and they still do this in other companies. That's not just Schwab. Many companies do this, are selling the managers, right? The investment managers. So now you have a market for both, one that wants the bot and that is like, no, that's what I trust, and one that wants the manager still. But in time, give it a generation, and you have a generation that doesn't have any preconceived like thought process on a bot or working on something else, then that becomes interesting. Give it 2 generations, right?
You're always one step ahead, Adam, and I'm not saying that to blow smoke up. You're so intuitive. So that's it. You just hit it on the head. So
Mm,
what Legal Illuminate is ultimately trying to do, and what our future is,
yeah,
and we're already in the works for that, is to create bots. Okay,
yeah.
we're having some coders start to work on this now, to where we'll have a bot so that it'll answer your day-to-day operational questions. We'll
Hmm.
take your business, we'll say, okay, Mission Matters, you guys face this on a regular daily basis, right?
Yeah.
So you're our client, and we're going to give you probably 75% of what you're going
Mm,
to need to know. If you got a question with HR, you've got a question with this, you've got a question with that, something comes up, you plug in your question, and the bot that is allocated to your matter
mhm.
is going to give you the information, and you don't have to use any of our time. You pay a service fee to use
Yeah.
the bot. And then if you have to ask me or contact me 25% of the time, your savings are
Huge.
immense,
Yeah.
huge, right? Because most lawyers are billing in 6-minute increments. So
Mm,
every time you call me, it's a 6-minute interval. You could call me, talk for an hour, it's $500 to
yeah.
answer a question that you might be just paying a small service fee
Mm,
to our entity, and to use the bot for most of it, right? So I listen, I'm scared, I'm excited at the same time. Um, you know, not to talk too much about my son, but he wants to be a trial attorney.
mm.
He wants to be a litigator. I said, well, that's the one area, I
Yeah.
think that you probably are pretty safe in, because
Yeah.
somebody's going to still have to stand up in front of the Supreme Court, and somebody's
Yep.
going to have to stand up in front of a jury and tell
Yeah.
them the facts. So, but yeah, I think a lot of the people who are sitting in offices who are just churning out documents and billing hours, I don't, I like I said, I mean, there'll probably be a lot of lawyers who watch this who want to, call me up and knock me out. But they can't deny that this is
Yeah.
real,
Yeah.
so.
And it seems like what many times happens when this takes place is that there's more opportunity. So I'm curious to see that part. I can't say intuitively, like, what is all this brain power? What is all this? Like, the other stuff's obvious to me, but like, what innovation's going to come up that expands the market? What's going to, like, there's a lot of smart. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it's going to be, but it just seems like people don't just go away. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I kind of toil with that, having children. I'm like, trying to tell my kids, listen, you have to learn how to use this.
Yeah.
And you say, okay, but what are, I'll tell you, I subscribed and joined an AI for lawyers class at University of Michigan. I did
Hmm.
I did the entire, semester. And I was like, okay, this is teaching me how to talk to this so that I
Hmm.
can get the best outcome for what I'm
Yeah.
looking for. um what is the next stage of it?
Hmm.
At what point does I feel almost like I have a relationship with it already. I
For
mean, I
sure.
don't know how often you use ChatGPT,
Yeah.
but it knows a lot about you, and
Yeah.
after you continually use it. So it's like I said, where is it all really going to go? I don't know, but I think that, it's obviously changing the entertainment industry. It's changing
Hmm.
automation. There's companies out there that are now creating machines that will be AI generated by, so who's going to be operating all of this? I think there's opportunity.
Yeah,
But you can't deny the fact that some industries are going to lose the
yeah,
need for manpower, right?
for
I
sure.
mean, or woman power.
Yeah. Wow, fun, man, to think, and that's why I love one of the things I love about doing these interviews is we'll be able to look back at this and be like, "Yeah, Joe, remember we were talking about that? No, you don't remember? Hold on, I got receipts, man. We talked about it." No, it's
Yeah.
awesome. Let's let
I'll probably be all wrong about it.
no, 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 not even, not on this one. I don't know about some of our other interviews. It's been a while, but no, and we'll look at those later. Let's get back to the book for a minute or two here. So, Mission Matters, Volume 11. So, our best-selling series. I'll tell you, Joe, we've been doing this now going on 9 years in December, and each book, it takes on a life of its own. Obviously, the authors that choose to contribute, I think one of the most special things about this particular project is bringing together authors that really, I mean, you don't have to be in a book, you don't have to put this work out. You're doing this because you believe in mission, because you believe in, you want to pay it forward, you want others to benefit from your work and from your thought process. So in regards to the book, a lot of different things you could have written about. What do you hope that the readers take away from your writing?
Well, it was inspired by, my children actually, who told me that I should start writing a memoir of some sort because I've had somewhat of an interesting ride, I'd say. And I said, well, I don't have the time to do that right now, but I do want to. At the time that the opportunity came, I said, what is the foremost thing on my mind? The foremost thing on my mind was how my own life in business, which is chaotic, right? I mean,
Mhm.
I have my company, my cannabis company, dubbed me the commander of chaos, and so that was kind of the inspiration, because I was prior to COVID, I looked at my life for the prior 5 years, and I said it was unsustainable. I was living a life where I was opening businesses, practicing law in two different states, launching the cannabis company, flying on planes, back
Mm,
and forth from Arizona, coaching little league in Arizona. Had a son who was in high school because he chose to move back to Chicago for high school. He's an athlete, and I
mm,
was attending hockey games for him on Thursday, flying back to Arizona, and driving up to Michigan on Saturday to work on the building that was going to ultimately be the cannabis cultivation. And then all of a sudden, COVID hit, and
yeah.
the whole world stopped. Right. And what became normal for me, is the fact that we can do this now, and it's so normal to have interviews and
Mm,
to meet with customers, meet with clients, meet with your team, and not have to be physically present. And
yeah.
so it allowed me to have this ability to sort of reflect on my life a little bit more,
Mm,
because I was, always, I guess, my wife says you're like the ADD kid who wasn't diagnosed when you were growing up because nobody really knew what it was, right?
yeah.
And so I'm always rolling, I'm always on to something new, even still today. So I was a deal junkie, and
Mm,
I was just obsessed with opportunity. And I said, let me kind of give some young, and I do this all the time. I
mm,
literally consult with a lot of young entrepreneurs, because I tell them, listen, there's things you're going to, even still in this age where we can, still work from anywhere. And
yeah.
it's great, but the other problem is that you're with your kids, but are you really with your kids? Because
Mm,
you obviously are working from home a lot more,
yeah.
and you're present, so you take a 5-minute break, you go see your kid, deal with their issue, right back to work.
Mm,
So there are challenges with it, because now it's like, before all this, you would at least leave the office and you would get home and you'd be like, okay, this is for a while, I'm going to unplug. You don't really, now you don't know where work is just
mm,
everywhere. But at least for me, having ventures in different states, having practicing law in Chicago, having cases out in Arizona, and
yeah.
having business affairs in other states, that the travel perspective became a lot easier to deal with.
Mm,
And I had some time to reflect. I started meditating, and I started actually taking care of my health and my brain and my well-being, because I was a zombie.
mm,
As I said in the book, I would wake up in the morning, and sometimes, and more often than not, I would look at the ceiling because I was like, I don't really know where I'm at today.
wow.
I would wake up and not know what city I went to sleep in the night before. And it wasn't
Mm,
because I was intoxicated. It was literally just forgetting, because it was a flurry of madness. And so, I feel more grounded now.
mhm,
And I'm able to service, what I have going in a much more streamlined fashion. I would say
mm.
that. So that's it.
Yeah. I look at some of the things you share, like even that in that piece of it, of this journey to, I don't know if you use the word, you use the word grounded. So I'll use that word grounded, balance, a lot of different things that people, would take away from that. And there'll be some entrepreneurs, some executives that are watching this now who are maybe still in, let's just say, that stage, right? Like, and they don't know if there's another side of it. Maybe they weren't even aware that they were in that stage until they watched this interview and they're like, oh my gosh, he just described me. Yeah, doesn't have to be that way. What kind of advice would you give the person that's maybe in that position right now?
Great question again. I would have to say, do you have a family or not? And that's
Mm,
the difference between me talking to a 35-year-old young father, who's an entrepreneur, and
yeah.
these young men who I told you referred to that I'm consulting with, that were my son's friends. If you're a young entrepreneur and you have no family, I advise you very differently. I tell you, this is the greatest time of your life. Stop complaining. Okay, stop crying that you have to eat ramen noodles, and that you're
Get
working.
him, Joe. Get
Yeah,
him, Joe.
that you're working 15-hour days and you have all these problems, because this is the best time for you to do it.
Yeah.
The 35-year-olds, and I was the 35-year-old, and I say this with one caveat. I always had the law office, right, to
Mm,
support me. So I've been able to, varying levels, I've always been able to take risk knowing that I had this. And so I don't fall into that bucket of, entrepreneurs. However, I do fall into the bucket of entrepreneurs that, had their first venture, had a great success
mm,
story, exited, are sitting on a pile of money, and now go to project 2, project 3, project 4. I had a little bit more challenge because mine was
yeah.
always still going. I always still had to show up, be a lawyer, do that,
Mm,
focus on the litigation, and I still do. I just got good at it. And
mm,
this type of stuff, what we're talking about now, which is AI, and being able to do a deposition in California, if I have a doctor that needs to be deposed, I can do this here. I don't have to fly to Arizona or California. I don't have to go
yeah.
through all that. So that's incredible. That allows me to continue doing what I'm doing. But the problem becomes is managing time and managing a presence. Where
Mm,
I tell the entrepreneurs of all varying degrees, some who are doing it for the first time, I tell them, listen, this is going to be a bloodbath. This
mm.
is not for people who don't understand what they're getting themselves into. It's hell on wheels, and you know it yourself.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, you're an entrepreneur. I mean, you started this company, and you and I've talked about this. It even when it's running and it's doing well, if you're not exiting, you're trying to grow it, right?
Yeah.
So if you're at the head of it, and I say, what point in time are you no longer an entrepreneur in the project you're in? You're no longer an entrepreneur in the project you're in when you either have somebody come over and take management over because it's running
Hmm.
itself, or you sell it. If you're still actually working in it, I don't care
Hmm.
if it's a 5-year-old business, a 10-year-old business, or a 1-year-old business. You're
Mm,
still an entrepreneur, because you still have to make sure that this business grows and continues to move forward.
mhm,
And it's no different than the first day you started it versus where you're at now, right?
mm,
Unless somebody other than Adam Torres is sitting here doing this,
mhm,
you're still an entrepreneur, right? So it's all about being present in time management, because what happens is that you love this more. Okay, what you're passionate about it, and you have
mhm.
to be passionate about what you're doing, right? What you're starting, especially an entrepreneur. And I'm not taking anything away
For sure.
from people who go in and work in a company and fall into a position and, be in the C-suite. They're passionate about what they're doing.
Yeah.
And it's just a different kind of attachment to it, right?
Mm.
Because this is, when you start the company, it's your baby, right? You feel
Mm-hmm.
like Mission Matters has Adam Torres tied to that name, even though it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't, but it does to you. So you have to figure out a way to make sure that baby is different than the other babies in your life, which sometimes are human babies, right? And
Yeah.
sometimes human people. And so it's really about being able to manage that and to keep pace. So me, I'm a serial entrepreneur. So
Yeah.
my problem when I was younger is I couldn't figure out which next thing I wanted to do. And I'll tell you, there was a lot of failures because of that. Like you cannot be doing two projects at once that are brand new. You can't. It's impossible.
Yeah.
And sometimes I thought that you could. And I say one is enough. Unless obviously, unless you're able to step away from it because somebody can replace you. And that's another thing. As an entrepreneur, you got to know when someone is ripe and ready to replace you. There's this founders syndrome, right? Is like, when is it time for me to give somebody else the reins, right? So there's a lot there. I could go on and on forever. I don't want to ramble, as I always do. But yeah, there's a lot to it, and I have a lot to offer and tell entrepreneurs about the journey along the way. So I'm hoping someday where I could just speak and share that information with them.
Man. Well, Joe, this has been, first off, just catching back up with you. It's been great. Obviously, super thrilled to have this book finally out live. For everybody watching, just so you know, we'll put some links in the show notes so you can pick up a copy and learn more about Joe's background and read his writing. But Joe, if anybody wants to connect with you, follow up and, see what's next, how do they do that?
They can do it at Joseph Ori, at Joseph Ori Law on Instagram, or at LinkedIn.com /in, I think it is, and Joseph Ori Biz, I think that's my handle. And or Joe at Legal Luminate, Joe at Ori Law Group, or Joe at Six Labs. I guess
Like a true serial entrepreneur right there. Come on, man.
Yeah,
Google Joe Ori, you'll see it. I know. I already know.
Yeah, I guess, for better or worse. I guess I just talked against everything I just said. Don't have too many things going on at once.
Nah, man, come on. And you got six in your household. Come on. So I don't even want to hear about it.
Yeah.
Amazing. And for everybody watching, just so you know, we'll definitely be putting the links to all Joe's contacts in the show notes. So you can click on that, head right on over, check out what Joe's working on as well. And speaking of the audience, if this is your first time with Mission Matters and you haven't done it yet, hit that subscribe or follow button. This is a daily show. Each and every day, we're bringing you new content, new ideas, and hopefully new inspiration to help you along the way in your journey as well. So again, hit that subscribe or follow button. And Joe, until the next time, man. And I look forward to getting on the road and promoting this book with you. So I need an excuse to come out there, see you, man. Come on.
Chicago's the best summer city in America, buddy. Anytime.
That's what I'm talking about. Mission Matters Chicago. Here we go.
Yeah, you got to start hitting up some of these people out here, man. All right.